Hey there, today I want to take a few minutes to talk about part-time farming. So, part-time farming. This is a super important topic to me because this is now my 4th season of part-time farming, and I have a lot of things to add to this discussion here. But what we're going to talk about are the benefits, talk about if you're just getting into farming or maybe you're trying to scale back, some tips, we'll get into some numbers, all sorts of cool stuff. Before we get into that, I first want to talk about the stigma of part-time farming. Well, it's unfortunate that there is a stigma attached to part-time farming, and I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I think for a lot of people it comes from the fact that people come from farming backgrounds and families and communities where to be a real farmer you have to have a lot of acreage and be doing this and that and doing it full-time and relying on that income. But I don't come from a farming background or a farming family, and I think a lot of you guys watching this might not either. So to me, got to think about what is a farm and what is a farmer. Well, a farm is a place where food is grown, and doesn't specify what size. And a farmer is the person that does that growing of the food. So it doesn't matter your acreage or how much you're selling. If you're growing food and selling it, you're a farmer. So don't worry about that stigma. You got to do what makes most sense for you guys. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into some of the benefits of part-time farming. There are a lot of benefits to part-time farming, and I think one of the biggest ones is that if you're farming part-time, your farm is considerably smaller. And when your farm is smaller, it's way easier to manage and there's way less stress because it's just not as big. Also, if you have another job or another source of income, well then it's also going to be less stressful on the farm because you don't have to rely on the income from the farm, and that takes a lot of the stress out of the farming. The other thing is, if you have just a lot of different things going on in your life or other things you enjoy doing, it allows you to do that. And so for me, as you guys know, I create YouTube videos, I do work for no-till growers, I do other video work. And so for me, part-time farming is what kind of allows me to do these other things. I also have a lot of responsibilities with my family, with my kids and my wife, and taking care of the house. So to me, it's trying to find that balance, and part-time farming allows you to do that. The other thing about farming part-time is that, you still get that lifestyle with less time commitment and less work. And I know a lot of people that are getting into this because they like the lifestyle. They like having fresh food. They like knowing where it comes from. They like growing food for the community and all those sorts of things. And if you have a smaller farm, in this case with a part-time farming situation, is that you can probably start farming in places you didn't think you could before. So maybe your backyard, maybe your neighbor's yard, maybe something like that. If you're in an urban area, you might be looking for a different kind of lot than you may even thought was possible. So it allows you to get started pretty quickly. So with that in mind, let's talk about things about part-time farming when you're getting started. If you're just getting started, I think that part-time farming is an amazing way to do that. And I think that right now there's a lot of people that are interested in farming or starting a farm because they're sick of the rat race in the city. They're sick of the digital life. They want to get connected to food and the earth and all that kind of stuff in the community. So I think it's incredible, but you got to be careful about jumping all in with something. And I personally know that I have that personality too, where when I get into something, I get all in on it. So I think you have to be careful. One thing is, if let's say you enjoy gardening and you like growing food, you may not want to do it full time. Sometimes when you take a hobby and turn it into a business, you tend to not enjoy it anymore. And that can be really hard too. A farm is a long-term investment and a long-term strategy. So by easing into it, you can see if you like it, if it makes sense for your family, but it allows you to try that lifestyle out before really committing to it. So part-time farming can be great for that reason. Well, there's clearly a case for the lifestyle of part-time farming, but I want to talk about the business side of it because a lot of people don't like to talk about the business of farming or think about it, or they just ignore it because they're just so interested in the lifestyle part of it. But a farm is a business, and for it to be a farm long-term, it needs to be a profitable business. And you got to make sure you set up your goals and the systems in here so that you can be profitable. Any business requires startup capital, and this is a great way to do that. So if you have a job, either part-time or full-time, that satisfies the needs of your family in terms of the finances, well, anything on the farm is extra. So in the first season or two, whatever money you're making from the farm, you can pay back the startup costs if you have to buy tunnels or compost or tools, things like that. And anything extra, you can then reinvest in the farm and build it out to the point where maybe you can do it full time if you're going to be enjoying that. And I think that's a really smart and calculated approach, so that you are, basically getting your farm started up for free, and there's also a lot less stress about it because you're not relying on the income from the farm. The other thing about part-time farming and getting things going is you need to think about sales and marketing. And when you start a business, any business, you don't just immediately start selling things. So you have to make sure that you're developing your sales outlets, farmers markets, CSA, restaurants, any sort of sales outlets, and work on your marketing, and that's important. The other thing to work on is your efficiencies. So I think it's really easy to work on your efficiencies on a small scale before it gets larger, because if you have inefficiencies, they just get multiplied as the farm gets larger. So there's a lot of things you can do with farming part-time when you're getting started. Scaling back from full-time farming to part-time farming is a very tough thing to talk about with people. And there might be a lot of reasons why you want to do this. One is there might be life changes that happen in terms of commitments, family, all those kinds of things. So, you might want to think about changing from full-time to part-time if you need to spend more time on other things. One thing though is that there's this urge to grow your farm as quickly as possible. And I see why people do it, but to me, I don't really care. It's what makes the most sense for me. So I see a lot of times where farms start growing and growing and growing, then they start taking on employees, and then to cover the cost of those employees, they have to grow the farm, and then there's more stress about just breaking even and covering costs. And in the end, you may not be making more money. I mean, net, taking home more money. So sometimes by cutting back, you can actually make more money. And let me explain that. When you have less farm to deal with, less acreage, you then can focus more on efficiencies and grow more in a small space. And I think when you start doing that, you can spend more time on sales and marketing. You can get more money for your produce. You can sell more of it, and you're spending less time growing and harvesting it. So frankly, you're getting paid a higher hourly wage when you think about it that way. So sometimes scaling back makes more sense. Let's get into some tips about how to be successful part-time farming. I think a lot of it comes down to the basics and growing really healthy plants and being really efficient with the space that you have, so you spend less time actually working on the farm and make more money selling it. But one thing with the basics is having strong starts and buying really good seeds. And it's a great opportunity to talk about today's sponsor, which is Osborne Quality Seeds. They're an incredible company and they sell great seeds, and they really make sure that they sell you the seeds that you need to be successful in your context. I've gotten a lot of seeds from Osborne over the last few years, including these cucumbers and these peppers, and you can see how well they're doing out here. I've also used a lot of their other seeds and had great results. I really recommend that you go check out what they have. They also have some unique mixes and some other stuff that you should be checking out. And I really want to thank them for sponsoring this channel and supporting small scale growers and part-time farmers and growers all over the place. So links down below, and I really recommend that you check them out. Having really healthy plants is a good start to having really big yields. But the other thing is healthy soil, which I've talked about a lot. Also a lot of the no-till practices, which eliminates the weeds, so I don't spend time weeding. You want to eliminate the time you spend on things that aren't making you money. And another thing that's been really helpful is caterpillar tunnels. And as you know, this video is not sponsored by Farmer's Friend, but I do love these tunnels, and they don't have to be from Farmer's Friend, but if you do, there is a link down below for you to check out where I got these from and all the details. The thing about tunnels, and what makes part-time farming successful for me this season, is that I get way more yield. I would say 2 times the yield that I would in the open field. Also, with the weather being so crazy, I don't have crop loss from heavy rainstorms and things like that. I don't have to stress about it. My season also gets extended. I have much more even growth and higher yields and just more consistency with my customers. And I really feel that growing in tunnels, especially when you're part-time, will just give you a lot more bang for your buck in terms of the time that you're spending out here growing food. Let's get into some specifics about numbers and figures, but before we do that, I want to have a big disclaimer here that you need to do your own calculations and estimates for what you can grow, how much you can sell it for, your markets, your farm, and the land that you're on, and all those sorts of things. Also keep in mind that this is kind of the first year of my farm as I'm restarting it again after running Raleigh City Farm, so I don't have actual sales numbers for you guys at this moment, but I have some estimates and ideas of what's possible. Keep in mind about my acreage, just to give you a little bit of an idea, I have 2 14 by 100 foot Gothic Pro tunnels from Farmer's Friend and the nursery greenhouse from Rimmel. So including the walkways and those tunnels, I have about just under 4,000 square feet, which is 0.09 acres. So with some of the other area around here, let's call it 1/10 of an acre. You can fill that in a lot of different spaces, either on your property or properties nearby. So totally doable for small scale farming and for part-time farming. But let's talk about sales, because that's the big question mark. How much money can you make part-time farming? I probably put in, I'd say 15 to 20 hours a week, some weeks less, some weeks more. There was a lot of investment up front into building the farm and getting it going, but now that I'm kind of just planting and harvesting and those sorts of things, the time spent per hour has gone down significantly. I think at a bare minimum, you can make gross $10,000 per tunnel per year. Now, I know a lot of you guys probably don't believe me, but let's break this down pretty simply. Now, for example, here in Raleigh, I grow and sell year round, but let's say you're gonna do 30 weeks a year of selling vegetables on the lower side, let's say. Maybe it could be more, maybe it could be less, but we'll use 30 weeks a year. So $10,000 per tunnel turns out to be $333.33 per week per tunnel. Now, that's very doable. So just for example, with lettuce, the lettuce that I'm growing, I'm getting about 70 to 80 pounds on the first cut per bed, and it's in the ground for about 5 or 6 weeks. So I sell to restaurants at $9 a pound for my lettuce mix. So on the lower end, let's say 70 pounds at $9 a pound is $630 per bed. I only need to sell a half a bed a week to cover that $333 essentially, or right around there. So if I'm selling a half a bed a week of lettuce per tunnel, I'm covering the amount I need to make $10,000 per year. So when you think about it that way, it's pretty doable. There's also a lot of ways to add on things. If you have some animals, you can be selling eggs, you can be doing microgreens, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not doing that this year. And I'm really trying to show that you can do quite a bit in a very small space. And again, in those first year or two, you can take all of that money, if you have other income, and reinvest it into the farm, add on more tunnels, invest in more tools, those kinds of things, and really grow the business. Hopefully this gave you some insight into part-time farming and also how I'm just personally making this work with Satin Hill Farm and all the other things I have going on here. But the big takeaway is stay focused, get really efficient, make sure you're selling the most you can with the minimum amount of inputs that you're making money and making the part-time farming thing successful for you. So if you're just getting into farming or you're thinking about scaling back, there's a lot of great information in here for you guys. And I think as my farm tends to grow in terms of sales, relationships with customers, getting more yield, all those kinds of things, that $10,000 per year per tunnel, I think is going to be much higher. And I think if you get it to $15,000 per year, and let's say you have 4 tunnels, now you're talking about $60,000 gross sales per year. And I think for a lot of people, that might be able to make it work for them financially, depending on your situation, obviously. But even so, you can still be farming part-time and being very successful here. I'll leave a link down below for related videos as I've been doing lately if you want to learn more about marketing, sales, efficiencies, things like that. And I really want to thank Osborne Quality Seeds for sponsoring this video. Again, check them out, links down below. And thank you guys for watching. Please hit subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you in the next one.